He called me the servant, in the house I built with my own 2 hands. My daughter just watched, then told me to apologize. They thought they had broken me. They were about to find out that even old wood can burn. If you're listening to this, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. My name is David, and I need to tell you how my sanctuary became my prison. The smell of sawdust always felt like a promise. It was the scent of the future. I spent 40 years in construction. My hands are rough now, stiff, but they know the grain of the oak floors in this house better than my own face. This big colonial on Elm Street, it was my masterpiece. I remember finishing the roof. My late wife Sarah stood on the lawn, holding our daughter Lisa's hand. Sarah said I didn't just build a house, I built a sanctuary, mortgage-free, paid for with decades of sweat and sacrifice. It was our fortress, a safe place. But safety, I learned, is just an illusion. Now the house is still here, but the sanctuary is gone. It feels like a hotel where I am the long-term, unpaid staff. It started 5 years ago when Lisa married Mike. Mike was all charm, expensive suits, a smile that gleamed too brightly. He talked about the future like it was something he already owned. He was in finance, investments, startups, complicated stuff. Shortly after the wedding, they hit a rough patch. Mike's business needed restructuring. They needed to save money. They needed a lifeboat, and I was the closest one. Lisa sat at the kitchen table I built. Her eyes, so like Sarah's, were wide, pleading. "Dad, the house is so big for just you," she said softly. "It's echoing. It's manageable, sweetheart," I replied. "Let us move in," she pressed. "Just for a little while we can help you out. You won't be lonely." Then came my grandkids. Emily, now 8, and Sam, 6. How could I say no? The house had been too quiet since Sarah passed. I wanted laughter again. I wanted a family. I opened my doors. I opened my heart. That was my first mistake. It didn't happen overnight. It was a slow erosion, like water wearing down stone. You don't notice until half the mountain is gone. It started with the master bedroom, Sarah's and my room. I heard noises upstairs, furniture sliding across the floor. I went up to check. Lisa was standing in the hallway, twisting her wedding ring, a nervous habit she developed after marrying Mike. She wouldn't look at me. "What's going on?" I asked. "Dad, it just makes sense," she explained, staring at the floor. "Mike and I need the space. The ensuite bathroom is better for the morning rush." She gestured towards my room. "We're moving in there." It wasn't a request, it was a statement. I looked at the door to the room I shared with Sarah for 30 years. The memories flooded back. The laughter, the tears, the quiet moments. I felt a tightness in my chest, a small crack in the foundation. I nodded. "Of course." I moved into the guest room downstairs. It was smaller, darker, but I told myself it was cozy. I was lying to myself. Then it was my study, the room where I kept my books, my drafting table, my history. I came home one afternoon, and the door was closed. I heard Mike's voice inside, loud, confident. I opened the door. My books were in boxes. My drafting table was gone. A large, sleek, modern desk sat in its place. Mike was setting up 2 computer monitors. "David," he said, barely looking up, "I need a professional space for video calls. The lighting is better in here." "Where is my drafting table?" I asked. "In the garage," he said dismissively. "Clients can't see clutter." Clutter. My life's work was clutter to him. I closed the door. The sound of the latch clicking felt loud, final, but that wasn't the worst part. The garage was next. That one hurt. That was my workshop, my space. My tools hung on the walls, organized, perfect. It was where I still built birdhouses, fixed broken toys. One Tuesday I came home from the grocery store. I opened the garage door and stopped dead. My tools were gone, packed in boxes, stacked high in a corner like garbage. My workbench was missing. In its place sat a sleek black sports car. It gleamed under the fluorescent lights. It looked like a predator resting in my space. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. I found Lisa in the kitchen. "Where are my tools? My bench?" She flinched. "Oh, that. Mike needed the space? For the car?" "His insurance is lower if it's garaged," she said quickly. She twisted her ring, round and round. "We had to make room." I nodded. "Sure, okay." I moved my tools and the drafting table to the shed out back. The shed was cramped, damp. It smelled like mildew and regret. But I made do. I always made do until I couldn't anymore. The erosion continued inside the house. My photos of Sarah on the mantelpiece, the ones that had sat there for 20 years, they disappeared, moved to a dark hallway upstairs where no one ever went. Mike's business awards and abstract modern art took their place, cold, sharp angles that didn't fit the warm colonial style. "We need to modernize, David," Mike had said, adjusting a painting that looked like spilled ink. They were erasing Sarah, erasing me. My days developed a new rhythm, a rhythm dictated by their needs, not mine. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. I made breakfast for Emily and Sam, packed their lunches, walked them to the bus stop. I was the chauffeur, the cook. While Lisa and Mike rushed off to their important jobs, I cleaned the kitchen, did the laundry, started the repairs. I mowed the lawn. I weeded the garden. I was the groundskeeper, the maid. I was the invisible engine that kept their lives running smoothly. I didn't mind the work. I loved the house. I loved my family. But I was becoming a ghost in my own home, a quiet presence that moved around the edges, essential but invisible. They didn't see me. They only saw the tasks I completed. And then the money talk started. Mike's business always seemed to be on the verge of a massive breakthrough, a breakthrough that just needed a little more capital, a little more fuel. They invited me to dinner, a rare occasion. Mike opened an expensive bottle of wine. He spread glossy brochures on the dining table, charts and graphs pointing ever upward. "It's a sure thing, David," Mike explained. His eyes shone with excitement. Or maybe it was greed. "We just need a bridge investment to get over the hump." Lisa reached across the table. She held my hand. Her grip was tight, almost desperate. "Mike is brilliant, Dad," she said. Her voice was full of admiration. "He's going to take care of us, all of us." I looked at her. My daughter. I loved her. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe him. So I gave them access to my retirement accounts. It wasn't a fortune, but it was my safety net. 40 years of careful saving. My security. They invested most of it. They assured me it was safe, growing faster than it ever had in the bank. "You're officially a silent partner, David," Mike said, clapping me on the shoulder, a gesture of camaraderie that felt hollow, false. I tried to ignore the tightness in my chest. The feeling that the ground beneath my feet was shifting, the foundation was cracking, and I was falling through the cracks. I focused on the kids. They were the only light left. Emily loved reading with me in the garden. Sam loved helping me in the shed, handing me tools, asking endless questions. They were the anchors keeping me tied to the world. But even they couldn't protect me from the storm that was brewing. The shadows grew longer one hot Saturday in July. The old swing set in the backyard, the one I built for Lisa when she was a child. It had a cracked support beam. It wasn't safe. I was in the middle of replacing it. The wood was old, stubborn. Sweat dripped from my forehead. I was measuring the new beam when I heard the back door slam. Mike stormed out of the house. He looked stressed. His face was red. He was clenching his phone like it was a lifeline. He paced the grass, running his hand through his expensive haircut. The air crackled with tension. "David," he barked. His voice was sharp, cutting. "What is taking so long? The kids are driving me crazy inside." I wiped the sweat from my forehead. I kept my tone even. "Patient. The main support is rotten, Mike. I have to replace the whole structure. It'll take another hour or two." "An hour?" he scoffed. He checked his watch. Always the watch. "This is ridiculous. I should have just hired a professional crew. They would have installed a new one in half the time." I stopped working. I looked at him, really looked at him. "Hiring a crew costs thousands, Mike. I'm doing it for free." Mike stepped closer, invading my space. His cologne was overwhelming, aggressive. "Look, I have a lot on my plate right now. My business is hitting a critical stage. I don't have time for your slow, meticulous pace. Just get it done." "I'm doing my best," I said. My heart was pounding. The anger was rising. A hot tide I tried to suppress. That's when he snapped. The mask slipped. The polite indifference vanished. And I saw the cold, raw contempt underneath. "Your best isn't good enough," he shouted. The sound echoed across the quiet yard. He leaned in closer, his voice dripping with venom. "You live here rent-free. You eat our food. The least you can do is pull your weight. Just do your job." He paused. then delivered the final blow. Sometimes I swear I forget if you're family, or just the servant. The servant. The words hit me like a physical blow. In my own house. The house I built. The house I bled for. My ears rang. For a second I forgot how to breathe. I didn't realize we had an audience. I turned around. Emily and Sam were standing by the back door, their small faces frozen, their eyes wide with shock. Emily's lip trembled. She started to cry, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. Sam looked confused, scared. He grabbed his sister's hand, pulled her back inside the house. They had seen it. They had heard it. And that was the worst part. The silence that followed was louder than the shouting. Mike looked momentarily uncomfortable, a flicker of realization that he had crossed a line. But it passed quickly. He shrugged. A gesture of dismissal, cold and callous. They need to toughen up, he muttered. He turned and walked back inside. The screen door slammed shut behind him. The sound was final. I stood there, holding the measuring tape. My hands were shaking. The man I had entrusted with my daughter's future. The man I had given my life savings to. He saw me as nothing more than hired help. The illusion shattered. The belief that I was a valued member of the family. Gone. I wasn't a respected elder. I wasn't a helpful father. I was the servant, and it was time for the servant to wake up. I finished the swing set. I worked slowly, methodically, processing the betrayal. The anger was a cold knot in my stomach, but beneath it was a clarity I hadn't felt in years. They thought I was weak. They were wrong. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I went into the living room. Lisa was sitting on the uncomfortable modern sofa, scrolling through her phone. The blue light illuminated her face. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said quietly. She didn't look up immediately. What is it, Dad? It's been a long day." Her tone was dismissive, tired. "Mike called me a servant today," I stated, flat, no emotion. In front of Emily and Sam, Lisa sighed heavily. She put her phone down. She rubbed her temples, as if I was the headache. "Dad, don't be dramatic," she said. Her voice was sharp. "He didn't mean it like that," he said. "Sometimes I forget if you're family or just the servant," I quoted. My voice was rising now. "How else could he mean it, Lisa?" "He's under a massive amount of stress," she defended him instantly. Her voice tight. "You know how hard he's working. You caught him at a bad moment." Then she delivered the words that cut deeper than Mike's insult. "You're being too sensitive. Too sensitive. My own daughter. Gaslighting me. Siding with the man who was destroying us. He insulted me, Lisa, and he hurt the children." Emily was crying. "They'll forget," she said dismissively. She waved her hand as if swatting away a fly. "Look, Dad, things are tense right now. Mike feels like you judge him, that you resent him for living here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Resent him? I gave him everything. Then she twisted the knife, the real breaking point. "Maybe you could just apologize," she suggested, looking me straight in the eye. "Apologize? For what?" "For provoking him earlier. It would help keep the peace." I stared at her. My daughter, the little girl I taught to ride a bike. She wanted me to apologize for being insulted, for being treated like dirt, in my own home. This was the real betrayal. Mike was cruel. But Lisa? Lisa was complicit. The choice paralyzed me. Should I argue? Fight? Risk shattering what little relationship we had left? Or should I swallow my pride one more time? Keep the fragile peace for the grandkids? The silence stretched. My newfound clarity won out over my lifelong habit of yielding. I wasn't going to bend. Not this time. I will not apologize for being insulted in my own home, I said. My voice was low, steady, dangerous. I turned and walked out before she could respond. I felt a shift inside me, the softness, the desire to please. It was hardening, turning to steel. I was done being the servant. Now I needed help. The next morning I called John. John and I had been friends since high school. He was a retired lawyer, sharp, cynical, the one who handled my will, the house deeds. He wore old tweed jackets and always smelled faintly of pipe tobacco. We met at a small diner downtown, away from the house, away from the prying eyes. The smell of burnt coffee and bacon was comforting. Familiar, I told him everything. The move to the guest room, the workshop in the shed, the investment, the endless chores, and finally the servant comment. John listened quietly, his expression growing darker with every detail. He stirred his coffee, the spoon clinking against the ceramic mug. When I finished, he leaned back in the booth. He looked grim. "David, you need to protect yourself," he said. "Right now, we need to look at the paperwork. Everything. Your accounts, the house title, this so-called investment. You think it's that bad?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. "You think Mike would—" I couldn't finish the sentence. I couldn't say the word. "Steal. I think when people start acting like they own everything, they usually believe they do," John said flatly. "And Mike sounds like a man who believes he's entitled to your life's work. Let's find out what he's actually done." The investigation had begun, but the truth was darker than I could have imagined. The atmosphere in the house grew colder over the next few days, toxic, suffocating. Mike stopped speaking to me altogether. If I entered a room, he would leave. He communicated through Lisa, a coward using his wife as a shield. "Mike wants you to stop using the expensive coffee," Lisa told me one morning. Her voice was strained. "He says it's wasteful. Mike wants you to make sure the kids are quiet in the morning. He needs his sleep." It was psychological warfare. He was trying to isolate me, to force me out. My relationship with Lisa grew strained. We were polite strangers, but my bond with the grandkids deepened. They sensed the tension, the fear. They started spending more time with me in the shed, away from the oppressive atmosphere of the main house. The shed became our refuge. One afternoon I found a drawing tucked under my door. It was by Emily. It showed the family, me, Lisa, Mike, Sam, and Emily, standing in front of the house. But while everyone else was colored brightly, Mike was a scribbled gray cloud, hovering above them, threatening. Kids see the truth, even when adults refuse to. Later that week, Sam was helping me oil my tools. He was quiet for a long time. "Grandpa," he asked, his voice was small, tentative. "Why is Daddy so mean to you?" The question pierced my heart. "He's stressed about work, Sam," I said. The rehearsed excuse tasted like ash in my mouth. Lies. "But you work hard too," Sam said, his brow furrowed. "You fix everything, and you're never mean." I hugged him tight. His simple honesty strengthened my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for them. They deserved better than this toxic environment. I needed to fight back. But first, I needed information. I needed the truth about my finances. I needed the statements, the proof of what Mike had done. A few days later, Mike and Lisa were out. A business dinner. I waited until the black sports car disappeared down the street. Then I went into Mike's office, my former study. My hands felt clammy, sweaty. I opened the desk drawers, rifling through papers, folders. I felt like a thief in my own house. But I had to know. I had to see the damage. I found my bank statements at the bottom of a pile of glossy folders. I flipped through them. The withdrawals were large, frequent, my life savings dwindling, disappearing. But underneath the statements, something else caught my eye. A large, rolled-up blueprint. I unrolled it on the desk. The heavy paper smelled of fresh ink. It was a plan for the property. My property. But it looked different. I traced the lines with my finger. My heart started pounding. The main house was there, but the backyard, it was completely transformed. The shed, my workshop, the last place that felt truly mine, it was gone, erased. In its place was a design for a large pool, an outdoor kitchen complex, a cabana, luxurious, expensive, and the downstairs guest room where I slept. It was labeled Home Gym. They weren't just pushing me out. They were renovating me out of existence. They were planning to erase me completely. They were already spending the money they didn't have. A wave of rage washed over me. Hot, blinding. Do I confront them now? Scream in rage? Demand they stop their audacious planning? Or do I stay silent? Use this knowledge strategically. I realized that my anger was a luxury I couldn't afford. I needed a plan, not a confrontation. I chose silence, strategy, war. I took pictures of the blueprint with my phone, every angle, every detail. I put it back exactly as I found it. The secret was safe, but I felt a new kind of fear, a fear that Mike was more dangerous than I realized. Before I could fully process the blueprints, I got a call. It was Aunt Clara, Sarah's sister. She was nosy, always overly involved, but she loved me, and she never trusted Mike. "David, honey, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice hushed. I was at the country club luncheon yesterday. You won't believe what I heard. Clara, I'm a bit busy, I started, but she cut me off. No, you need to hear this. I was talking to Martha Jenkins. You know Martha? Her husband used to work in finance. In Chicago. My blood ran cold. Mike always said he was from New York. Martha said her husband knew a Mike Andrews years ago. Clara continued. He looked exactly like your Mike, but Martha said he left Chicago in a hurry. There was a scandal. Missing funds. He disappeared. Chicago. Missing funds. Disappeared. It all started to make a horrifying kind of sense. Mike wasn't just greedy. He was a professional con artist, and I was his latest mark. And my daughter was his accomplice. If this story is gripping you, a like would mean a lot, because what happened next was a nightmare brought to life. A week later, John called. His voice was urgent, grave. David, we need to talk, in person. Now, I have the information from Chicago. We met at his office. It was raining outside. The sky was gray. Fitting, John spread the documents out on his desk. A battlefield of betrayal. We cross-referenced the information from Clara with the public records in Chicago. John began. His voice was tight. Controlled. Mike Andrews is Michael Anderson. He changed his name legally 10 years ago, right after the firm he worked for collapsed. He pointed to the financial records. The investment Mike put your money into. It's the same ammo he used in Chicago. It's not just failing, David. It's a Ponzi scheme. It collapsed 3 months ago, John continued. Most of your retirement savings are gone. Completely wiped out. I closed my eyes. The room spun. My life's work. 40 years of sweat and savings. Vanished. Stolen by the man sleeping under my roof. I felt sick, hollow, empty. But that's not the worst part, John said gently, his voice heavy with sympathy. He pushed another document toward me, a single sheet of paper that would change everything. The quitclaim deed. Do you remember co-signing this document with Lisa and Mike? He asked. About a year ago, shortly after you gave them the money. I nodded slowly. They said it was for the investment paperwork, to formally add me as a silent partner. Lisa said it was fine. David, John said. His eyes met mine, filled with pity and anger. It wasn't investment paperwork. You signed the house over to them. Legally, the house belongs to Lisa and Mike. I stared at him, unable to process the words. The house, my sanctuary, gone. But I trusted her, I whispered. The words tasted like blood in my mouth. My own daughter, my betrayer. They abused that trust, John said angrily. He slammed his fist on the desk. And it gets worse. It could get worse. How? Once the house was in their name, they immediately took out a massive home equity line of credit. They refinanced the entire house. The house you paid off. Why? I asked. To cover Mike's other debts. And to maintain their lifestyle. The car. The dinners. The blueprints for the pool. He paused. The house is the collateral, David. And they haven't made a payment in 3 months. The bank has initiated foreclosure proceedings. The realization hit me with the force of a runaway train. They hadn't just stolen my savings. They had stolen my legacy. They had tricked me into giving away my home. And then they had gambled it away. They had risked the roof over their children's heads. Emily and Sam, my grandkids. Despair threatened to swallow me whole, a dark tide pulling me under. Do I accept this catastrophic loss? Do I walk away, defeated, broken? Or do I fight, a legal battle that would be messy, expensive, and could destroy what was left of my relationship with Lisa? I looked at John. The despair hardened into resolve. The steel returned to my spine. I was no longer a victim. I was a fighter. I want my house back, I said. The words were cold, hard final. It won't be easy, John warned. Proving fraud is difficult. It could take years. We don't have years, I said. The auction is next week. We need to find another way. The pressure inside the house was mounting. The tension escalating. The facade was crumbling. Mike was constantly on the phone, shouting, begging. Lisa was crying all the time. The perfect life she had built on lies was falling apart. I started paying attention to the mail, the letters from the bank, past due, final notice. They were no longer polite requests. They were threats. The bank was closing in, but they weren't the only ones. One afternoon, a sleek black car pulled into the driveway. It looked expensive, menacing. A man got out, expensive suit, slicked back hair. He didn't look like a banker. He looked dangerous. His name was Tony. I recognized the name from Mike's frantic phone calls. A loan shark. He pounded on the front door. The sound echoed through the quiet house. Mike opened it. I was on the porch, trimming the hedges, hidden from view, but close enough to hear. "Where is my money, Mike?" Tony demanded. His voice was low, menacing, a snake ready to strike. "I'm moving it, Tony," Mike stammered, his voice shaking, the arrogance gone, replaced by fear. "It's just a liquidity issue." "A liquidity issue?" Tony scoffed. He stepped closer to Mike. "You borrowed $100,000 from me 6 months ago. I don't see a dime, and I hear rumors that your whole operation is falling apart." "It's just a temporary setback, Tony," Mike pleaded. "I swear, you have 48 hours, Tony said. His voice was cold. "Final, to get me my money, or I will start dismantling your life. Piece by piece, starting with that fancy car, and maybe that pretty wife of yours." Tony stormed off, leaving Mike pale and shaking. Mike hadn't just borrowed from the bank. He had borrowed from the mob. He was desperate, and he was dangerous. The realization that Mike had brought this danger to my doorstep, to my grandchildren, was terrifying. Should I report this to the police? It might protect us physically, but it could also trigger a violent reaction from Tony or Mike. I decided to wait, to watch. John advised me to secure my remaining assets. I still had a small emergency fund in a separate account, about $20,000, that Mike didn't know about. It was all I had left in the world, my last line of defense. I tried to transfer the money to a new account. John set up for me, safe from Mike's grasping hands. But something was wrong. My access to my own bank's online portal was denied. Password incorrect. I called the bank. The customer service representative was polite, professional, but the words she spoke were devastating. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, but your daughter, Lisa Miller, has power of attorney over your accounts. She revoked your access privileges yesterday." Lisa, again, the betrayal cut deeper this time. Sharper, they had locked me out of my own life. I confronted her that evening. She was in the kitchen drinking a glass of wine, her hand trembling as she lifted the glass to her lips. "Lisa, I need access to my bank account," I said. My voice calm, but the anger simmering beneath the surface. She flinched, her eyes wide with fear and guilt. "Dad, I can't," she whispered. "Mike said the finances are complicated right now. He said it's better if he manages everything." "It's my money, Lisa," I said, stepping closer. "You had no right to block my access." "It's family money," she cried, the desperation bubbling to the surface. "We are trying to save this family. And you were being difficult. Difficult. Because I didn't want to be robbed blind." The urge to shake her, to force her to see the truth, was overwhelming, but I saw the fear in her eyes. She was terrified, of Mike, of the truth. I realized she was too far gone, lost in the web of lies. Mike had spun. I had to save myself. I walked away, the silence heavy between us. The chasm widening, the incident confirmed one thing. They still saw me as weak, as a passive old man they could control. A servant. That was their biggest mistake. They underestimated me, and that would be their downfall. John and I started working on a plan. It was a long shot. Complicated, risky. It relied on the fact that banks are lazy, greedy. They prefer to sell delinquent debt rather than go through the lengthy and expensive process of foreclosure and auction. "We can try to buy the mortgage directly from the bank," John explained. "They might sell it at a discount, just to get it off their books." "But I don't have that kind of money," I said. "And I can't even access the 20,000. "We need to get that access back first," John said. "We can file an emergency injunction, based on the evidence of fraud from Chicago. It might take a day or two. And then what? "20,000 isn't enough." "It might be enough for a down payment," John said. "I have connections, private investors who specialize in distressed debt." We met with one of the investors, Miss Chen, a sharp business bosom, immaculate suit. She looked at the appraisal of the house, looked at the blueprints I had photographed. "The property is solid," she said, her voice brisk. "The renovations planned would increase the value significantly. But the current occupants are a liability. They won't be occupants for long," I said, my voice steady. Miss Chen looked at me, a flicker of respect in her eyes. "If you can secure the down payment, we have a deal, but we have to move fast. The auction is in 3 days. The plan involved using the last of my emergency fund, my last safety net. If it failed, I would be left with absolutely nothing. No savings, no house. At 70 years old, I would be homeless. Destitute. Was I willing to risk complete ruin for a chance to reclaim my legacy, my dignity, my home? I looked at the picture of Sarah in my wallet. Yes, I was. The next day, the injunction came through. The evidence of Mike's past fraud was compelling. I regained access to my $20,000. The clock was ticking. The foreclosure notices were taped to the front door. Formal documents, stark, unavoidable. A scarlet letter marking our shame. The house was scheduled to be auctioned in 48 hours. The house was filled with a suffocating tension, a ticking time bomb. Mike was frantic, alternating between rage and despair. He paced the house like a caged animal. Lisa looked hollow, broken. Emily and Sam were quiet, scared. They clung to me. The day before the auction, Mike cornered me in the shed, my refuge, now a battleground. He looked terrible, his expensive suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He smelled of stale whiskey. "David, we need to talk," he said, his voice hoarse, desperate. "I have nothing to say to you, Mike," I said. I continued sanding a piece of oak. The familiar motion calmed me. "Listen to me." He grabbed my arm. His grip tight, painful. I yanked it away. "Don't touch me. I can save the house," he pleaded. The desperation making him pathetic. I found a way. "I can get the money. But I need a little cash, a processing fee." He was lying. I knew it. He needed the money to pay off Tony, or to run away, to disappear like he did in Chicago. "You've stolen enough from me," I said. My voice flat, final. "It's your daughter's home, our grandchildren's home," he cried. "You still have that emergency fund. I know you do. The bank infers it. Just 20,000. Give it to me. I'll pay you back in a week. I swear." I shook my head. "No." The mask dropped. The desperation turned into pure venom. "You stubborn old fool," he spat. "You think you have any power here? This was always my house, my life. You were just a burden. A servant. You were nothing." He lunged at me, trying to grab my wallet from my pocket. A desperate, pathetic attempt to steal from me one last time. I shoved him back, harder than I intended. My builder's strength surprised us both. He stumbled over a stack of lumber, crashed to the dusty floor. He lay there, stunned, defeated, surrounded by the tools he never learned how to use. "You want to know the truth, Mike?" I said, my voice surprisingly calm, resonating with a strength I didn't know I possessed. "You're right about one thing. I was a servant." I stepped closer, towering over him. "I served my family my whole life. I served my daughter. I even served you. But I'm done serving your greed." I walked out of the shed, leaving him sitting on the floor, alone, broken. The next morning, the day of the auction. The house was silent as a tomb. Mike had been gone all night. Maybe he ran. Maybe Tony caught up with him. I didn't care. Lisa was sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the foreclosure notice. Emily and Sam were sitting next to her, unusually quiet, holding hands. "It's over, Dad," Lisa whispered when I walked in, her voice broken. "The auction is at noon. We have to pack." "I know," I said. I went to the cupboard, took out my favorite mug, the one with the picture of Sarah. I poured myself a cup of coffee. My hand was steady. "How can you be so calm?" Lisa cried, the tears finally falling. He ruined us. He ruined everything you built. It's not over yet, Lisa. I looked at the clock. 10 a.m. John would be making the move right about now. Miss Chen was ready. The wire transfer was scheduled. The 20,000 was in escrow. The minutes ticked by, each one a hammer blow against my ribs. At 11 a.m., John called. I walked into the hallway to take the call, my heart pounding. I answered the phone. Hello? It's done, David, John said, his voice triumphant. The bank accepted the offer. The transfer went through. You and the investors hold the debt. The auction is cancelled. I closed my eyes, leaning against the wall, a wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled my knees. It was over. I had won. I walked back into the kitchen. Lisa was crying hysterically now. Just then, Mike walked in the back door. He looked utterly defeated. He must have come back for one last attempt. Tony gave me another 24 hours. But it doesn't matter, he muttered, sinking into a chair. He looked at Lisa. The bank wouldn't take a partial payment. It's gone. We lost the house. I walked over to the counter, picked up the house keys from the hook, the keys to the kingdom I built. I looked at Mike, then at Lisa. No, I said. My voice echoed in the kitchen. It's not gone. They both stared at me, confused. Mike's eyes narrowed. I placed the keys on the table in front of Lisa. I built this house for you, Lisa, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Every nail, every board. It was meant to be your sanctuary, but I will not watch it be destroyed by greed. And I will not be a servant in my own home. What are you talking about, Dad? Lisa asked, wiping her eyes, her voice trembling. I bought the mortgage, I said. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Final. The house is mine again. It's safe. Mike's head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief, then a dawning horror. You couldn't. You don't have the money. He looked at the keys, looked at me. The realization hit him. I had enough, I said. Enough to take back what you stole. I turned to Lisa. The house is now in a trust, managed by John and the investors. It is protected from Mike, from his creditors, and from your own poor decisions. I explained the new arrangement. You can stay here, Lisa, you and the children. But things will be different. She would have to pay rent. A fair market rate to the trust. The money would be used to repay the investors, and for Emily and Sam's education. And Mike? Lisa asked. She looked at her husband, a mixture of fear and resentment. The spell was finally broken. She finally saw him for what he was, a fraud. He has 24 hours to leave, I said. I locked eyes with him. If he ever sets foot on this property again, I will have him arrested for trespassing. I handed John's card to Lisa. And I suggest you use that time to contact a divorce lawyer, Lisa, because John has enough evidence of fraud and embezzlement from here in Chicago to put him away for a long time. Mike stood up, his face a mask of rage, but he had no move left. He was checkmated. He looked at Lisa, expecting her support, her defense. She just stared at the floor, shame radiating from her. He realized he had lost, not just the house, but his family, his leverage, everything. He turned and walked out the door, without a word. The screen door slammed shut behind him. We never saw him again. Lisa looked at the keys, then at me. The tears streamed down her face. But these were different tears. Tears of remorse. Tears of realization. Dad, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I was so blind. I didn't see what he was doing to you. To us. I almost let him destroy everything. I know, I said softly. The anger I felt towards her was fading, replaced by a profound sadness and a flicker of hope. But you have to open your eyes now, Lisa, for your children. I hugged her, a real hug, for the first time in years. It was a start. I packed my things from the guest room. It didn't take long. I took my tools from the shed, my clothes, and the picture of Sarah. I wasn't going to live there anymore. The sanctuary was broken, the memories poisoned. The house was safe, but it wasn't my home anymore. I needed a fresh start. I said goodbye to Emily and Sam. I told them Grandpa was moving to a new apartment by the lake, but that they could visit any time. They hugged me tight. Emily gave me a new drawing of the family. The gray cloud was gone. The swing set will always be waiting for you, I promised. I moved into a small, 2-bedroom cottage by the lake. It was quiet. It was clean. It needed some work. The roof leaked a little. The porch sagged. But my hands still remembered how to build. That first evening I sat on the porch, drinking coffee, watched the sunset over the water. The air smelled like pine needles and fresh air. Not sawdust, but something new. I felt a profound sense of loss. The dream I had built for my family was fractured. My relationship with Lisa would take a long time to heal. The scars were deep, but I also felt something else. Peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the servant. I was David. A father, a grandfather, a builder. And as I sat there, sketching plans for a new workbench, I realized that I didn't just build a house. I built a life. And sometimes you have to tear things down before you can build them back stronger. And now, finally, I was ready to live it again. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your time matters and your dignity matters more.